Harvard, Michigan. This is my CSP entitled Tourism in a Protracted State of Emergency, the Case of Bizerte, Tunisia. First, let's start with the key map, which will be divided into two parts using the paradox method. First, you'll have the militarized landscape, then we'll move to the paradise destination. For the first part, I will focus on the timeline and context, how and why we got to the paradox itself. For the second part, I will focus on the location and the ecosystem to highlight the hidden potential of the city and why it is so significant. This will lead us to my pilot intervention, the 4C roadmap. First, let's start with the militarized landscape. And here, let me start by telling you the story of the spine of my country's economy and ultimately the key pillar for its growth and potential for development. This spine is tourism, and it has been damaged. To reveal how and why, let's go back a few years back. In 2011, Tunisia had a critical regime change. This regime change was followed by years of instability, both politically and economically. This instability allowed for political assassinations and terrorist attacks. These terrorist attacks did not just happen. They specifically targeted tourism, knowing that it is a key pillar for its development. Here's a graph that shows the negative impact of this instability on tourism. After 2011, as you can see, the country lost close to 49% of the revenues generated from tourism, dropping from $2.6 billion in 2010 to as low as $1.2 billion in 2015. Since then, the numbers started to rise. And as you can see, that rise has been simultaneous with what we call a state of emergency. The emergency state is still in place in Tunisia, and it is extended until December 2025 and will be expected to be extended again. A state of emergency is a state of high-intensity surveillance and a constant state of alert of our armed forces. But what this graph doesn't show you is how restricted movement will be under the state for tourists and locals alike. In other words, the graph doesn't show you how the deteriorating quality of tourism and the livelihood of the people. The state does keep the country safe, but it also comes at the expense of freedom. Where I come from, my city, Bizerte, the paradox feels the most intense. A city that is supposed to be breezy, serene, and inviting is instead surveilled, shut down, and torn apart between a naval military base to an aerial military base, lakes under siege, and mountains used as prison sites. The situation has always been the case in my home. It didn't start with regime change or terrorism. It was exacerbated by them. In fact, when the French took over the city in the 1880s, they considered Bizerte to be a strategic location for military purposes. So they turned the city into a military base by design. And it took us years to free the city. In fact, Bizerte celebrates its own Independence Day called Evacuation Day, which was 7 years after the national independence. The French never wanted to free the city. We had to fight it through the War of 1961. October 15 marks the day in which we celebrate the evacuation, be it the day in which the French finally left the city in 1963. But what we don't celebrate is the colonial legacy that comes with that celebration. In fact, each October 15, the city completely shuts down. Businesses close, and even completely independent activities like fishing or hunting are prohibited. Residents are advised to quarantine, and the military is deployed everywhere. Not for a few minutes, but for the whole day. Locally, the resentment is difficult to hide. Indeed, many resent this protocol. For them, they perceive the military to be more of a colonial legacy than a protector. In fact, the current government uses the same naval base, the same aerial base, and the same prisons that they inherited from the colonial era. Nothing has changed. The same buildings are used for the same purpose. And if all of that sounds naive, let me tell you that I came to this conclusion not by show of idealism, but by way of experience. Someone like me, who comes from the city, who grew up not knowing anything but Tunisia in a state of emergency, and whose life has been shaped by shaped like my father and my grandfather by the will of foreign forces, be it the French, terrorism, or my state tried to defend me. This is an aerial view. This is a satellite image of Bizerte, my city. And that is my neighborhood. This is me. And that's the closest part of water that I can swim in, be it this time the lake. That's my WhatsApp emoji, by the way. Okay, so instead of crossing the road to swim at the lake, I have to go 4 miles. I have to travel 4 miles to get the accessible place. Why? Because this area right here is an aerial base. That area right there is a naval base. It's different. That area right there is a commercial port and a dumpster. And that area in the circle is a marina. And let's say I don't want to do that. I want to cross to the other side and possibly swim in the lake, right? I can simply do that. But even there, I can't. Because that area right there is polluted by the waste generated from the first site. The second part, paradise destination. And here, I want to say that everything that I previously mentioned keeps us blinded from the beauty of my home. And for that part, I want to set the mood, and I have prepared a video for you that I want to show you. On the land that you just saw, the locals depend on the waters. And these waters are dirty. The food and the ancient practices we so like to preserve are in danger. Government after government, mayor after mayor, the complex issue of the military and how it comes at the expense of tourism and the ecosystem has been neglected. The city is dying, and we need to do something about it. Hence, the 4C roadmap. The 4C roadmap stands for 4 C's. First C, connect. Bizerte stopped being a buffer zone for France a long time ago, so it needs to stop being treated like one. The government has 14 communes with poor infrastructure and no political narrative connecting them. The borders between these communes are artificial. They create social tension and false hierarchies. This issue must be addressed through a cohesive social narrative, one that recognizes these tensions and aims to promote inclusivity and equal treatment of the citizens.
1 more minute.
In addition, the 2 main hotspots of the city that are divided by the canal are only connected by one movable bridge. This creates a bottleneck effect. So we need to finalize the new static mega bridge plan and make sure that businesses and shops can thrive in the surrounding areas. Second C, clean. And by clean, I don't simply mean picking up trash from the streets and the lakes. I mean a full strategic and well-developed plan to depollute the lakes of the city. Third, construct and reconstruct. Meaning take care of the remains of and the abandoned infrastructure, including the ruins of World War II, like bunkers on the beach, These ruins can be hotspots for tourists to visit. There we should have signs for QR codes that you can scan to direct you to a webpage containing the history and significance of the monument that you just witnessed. So far, the government has never had this idea in mind. Fourth, consolidate. On one hand, between civil and military relations by launching associations and social clubs for veterans. In fact, veterans can even be consulted for a new urban zoning plan for the city and for touristic projects if they include military history components. And second, by not replicating the old mistakes of tourism. This is to remedy the relations between the local and the foreigners. To end, this road plan does not aim to neglect one aspect of the city for the other. It aims to highlight both. In fact, after all, the same canal that is used to let submarines through is visited and loved by dolphins. This plan does not aim to erase the history of the place nor its identity. It aims to embrace it and cherish it. Together, these four C's foresee a future where the city can be both home for machines that keep us safe and wildlife that keeps us alive and happy. Protest after protest, the message of the locals couldn't be clearer. We are part of the nation. We help liberate it. We belong and we matter. And we want a free city, free from corruption, free from generational trauma, free from excessive military outposts, and free from government neglect and denial, so that those who fought to free the city can finally rest in peace.